So our interests are just misaligned, and obviously Palestinians want an army, and obviously Israel doesn't want them to have one because we see that as a threat to our safety. So a lot of better understanding the conflict is understanding how our interests are just misaligned, and Israel's going to make an effort to keep Palestinians as unarmed as possible until they feel confident that those arms won't be used against them.
My
right?
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you're
But
good.
then
You're
again,
good.
but then again, but Adar, there's weapons and stuff given to the PA. You know what I mean? At the same time,
Yeah. I
This
mean,
is-
the
That's true.
level and power of
Yeah.
arms is definitely something to question, but it's not like the Palestinians are completely devoid of weaponry or any ability to defend themselves or take offensive or defensive action. Like, they have some ability.
Well, right, some ability, but in the form more so of guerrilla warfare. Like it's not,
Exactly.
they don't have a military that could in any way, shape, or form, compete or
Yeah. Well, I
fight
kind
back. Yeah, with guerrilla warfare. Sure.
Yeah. I kind of see Amir's point on this though, because what they have right now is Hamas and PA, and they don't have people in control who are going to use a military responsibly. Obviously, they have a right to a military as a peoples, but I get what Amir is saying in that first we need to deal with who the leadership is and how possible it is to negotiate with them. I think we've all seen time and time again that negotiating with Hamas doesn't really seem to lead anywhere, and the PA. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it makes sense that Israel would resist letting a group arm themselves if they have genocidal aspirations. Like, again, we just need to understand, like, there's no reason why Israel would be cool with that, but it's easy to understand why Palestinians would advocate for that. I do.
Sure.
I do want to move to the concept of how do we actually do it.
Yeah.
So you said it was done with the IRA, right?
Yeah.
How exactly was that done?
I'm not clear.
To hand their weapons in.
Yeah, it was part of the Good Friday Agreement,
Yeah, it was part of
signed
the
by
agreement.
both.
Okay, it was done in an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing about the troubles in Northern Ireland that makes it different from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is that there was almost 3 separate parties fighting in Northern Ireland. There was the Republican paramilitaries that were like, as in Catholic paramilitaries, like the IRA and the various splinter groups. Then there were the Protestant or Unionist paramilitaries, like the UVF and other, orange type of organizations. And then there was the British Armed Forces, which is like, like the British Army. And there's no like paramilitary when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Or not on like the Israeli side, they're Palestinian paramilitaries, but there's not an Israeli paramilitary, there's just the IDF. So the way Good Friday worked is that it wasn't like both the Republican and Unionist paramilitaries handed their weapons in and agreed to abide by, civil law under British, oversight. And they became political parties in the Northern Ireland Parliament. That's kind of what happened. And it's a good place to start by saying, yes, like if it happened there, we can have some sort of agreement here, but it's not a perfect mirror for what's happening, in Israel-Palestine. The situation's different, the amount of parties fighting are different, as well as the aspirations are different.
You're completely right, Jared, but you can look at the process there and you can say, okay, how can we build on that? Now, personally, Adar, the way I think we build on that is that we don't make the same mistakes we've made in the past, like make unilateral moves to move out of Gaza and things like that. If any move needs to be agreed between Israelis and Palestinians, and I think the actual plan, whatever that may be, if it's 1 state, 2 states, 3 states, no borders, no state, whatever it's going to be, at the end of the day, needs to work for the people on the ground. And I think it should be based on economical benefits for the people of Gaza and the West Bank, and the safety and security for the people in Israel. Those need to be the main focuses. And then you look at how you do that: investment, high tech, tourism, all these kind of things. Interfaith dialogue is very important. Getting sheikhs, getting priests, getting rabbis together to encourage the flock to be peaceful. Because unfortunately, on our side and also on the Palestinian side, we have an incitement issue, which unfortunately, as I'm sure your viewers saw, come to a head a month and a half ago over here with the riots, the lynchings, the terrible things that happened. So we need to base the plan on those things, and of course, above all, education. Right, the textbooks that are coming out in some of the Palestinian areas are really anti-Semitic. That needs to all go. We need to start educating our children together. That's what I think personally. And there are schools in Israel that do that, but it's a minority. It's only a few percentage of schools that have mixed classes. So I think, that's the way we can pave a future towards a peaceful existence out here in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
But how much of that is by choice that it's not mixed? I mean, I'm sure that, because I know many Arabs that are totally cool with mixing with Jews. I'm sure that to a certain degree, there's a lot of choice involved in wanting to stay within your own culture and learn your own traditions at school.
Right.
I get that, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it seems like we currently have 3 distinct school systems, 3 different curriculums, one for secular and many religious Jews are in one school system. Ultra-Orthodox have their own curriculum, and then the Arab sector has their own curriculum. There might be other variations of that, but it is a good question. Is like how unified can a society be if they have different school systems? I know that they're like the libertarian approach would be like you should have a free marketplace of education. I'm not sure how on board I am with that. We need a unified society, and school is one way to do it.
Why not though?
But
why not? But that doesn't detract from the normal mainstream school. You can still have that. It's just that everyone has.
Private schools, sure. No, for sure, private schools. Yeah.
Personally, so I kind of have a chip in this fight because my mum's, been a teacher her whole life in England, in the UK. And, she's very passionate about education. She thinks it's the key, to solving everything pretty much. And I tend to agree with her on that. And she thinks that really we're lacking behind in terms of education all over the world. She was a teacher here in Israel as well back in the 80s and 70s. So she's seen it all. And she thinks that really we need to come at it from a kind of holistic approach. There's certain kids and there's certain, types of personalities that aren't suited to be in a classroom, even from the age of 11, 12, 13, 14. We can get these kind of kids into, trades and maybe the high-tech industry and give them a diverse range of skills to set them up for the real world and when they get out there and at 18. One kid might be more, into dance and arts. He might go to that school. One kid might be into nature, wildlife. He might go to the forestry school. So the more choice we have and the more diversity in terms of education, I think it will just be great, and you'll see a change. In terms of getting people together, it's not just up to education, the education sector to make that happen. It's also, upon people themselves to take it upon themselves to be. One of the myths in Israel is that, it is very segregated and it's an apartheid. Well, if you go to Yafo and you see fishermen, Jews and Arabs, that have been fishing on the sea together for 30 years, they don't want any of this mess. They don't want any of these riots. They don't want any of these things going on. They just want to be able to fish in the sea and bring some money home for their families. And that's the reality in a lot of different places. If you go into any hospital in Israel, you're going to see Jews and Arabs working together for the best of their patients. So it needs to be a societal thing alongside education. That's my main.
Well, I mean, I think the society itself, depending on where it is, on where people live is already pretty well integrated. But I think the fact that like there's two different like curricula based off of like what culture you want your kid to learn, because that's really what it is. You know, like if you want your kid to grow up in Arab culture, you send them to an Arabic school. If you want them to grow up in Jewish culture, you send them to a Jewish school, whether that be secular or religious.
Well, that's important, though.
Yeah. That's important for people to, you know, what's the word? Preserve like their cultural heritage and pass it on to their kids. Having that taught in schools is important. But I feel like the fact that like kids go to these different buildings to learn these things, like that implants an idea in their head at a very young age when people are their most impressionable. You know, that makes them look at like these people who go to the other school, not to their school, as like inherently different when that's really not the case. And I don't have the perfect idea for that. I think maybe we can just do it in the same school but different classrooms. I don't know. I really don't.
I get what you're saying, but I think that religion and culture are heavily intertwined. I would say especially in the Middle East, right? Yeah. So one of the potential major stumbling blocks there is that people want to educate their children in their religion, but the way it was done for me was at school. We had religious education classes, and maybe with secular Jewish schools, I don't know how secular the schools get on the Palestinian side, but maybe with secular Jewish schools, it's not such an issue. But when you have the Haredim teaching Judaism heavily, and on the Palestinian side, they have so much of their religion imbued into them at a young age. It's part of those religions conflict with each other on certain things. Like we were just speaking yesterday on our podcast to Zubaida, and she was telling us that part of the Muslim belief is that when our Moshiach comes, he will be the Antichrist for them. So for that, there are segments of the population where they're never gonna reconcile, because there are people that think we're the devil, and there are people on our side that think they're the devil. And that's kind of insurmountable in a certain way, unless you're just going to ignore these massive percentages of the population. I don't know how to tackle that personally.
Kane, though, I think that's maybe something that can happen naturally. If you remember when we spoke to Zubaida about this issue with the Mashiach, and the same thing with the Christians and Jews and Armageddon and Armageddon and all this kind of stuff. If you look at it from an agnostic perspective and you take all these things as stories and not as these things are fact and going to happen per se, then these problems dissolve themselves, if you see what I mean. The issue is that we don't have enough of that critical thinking going on. Unfortunately, unfortunately, a lot of people follow their religion blindly. They will fast for something that they don't even realize why they're fasting for, or that they'll pray and they don't exactly realize the words that are in the prayer. So what I think needs to happen in that sense is education, and is taking religion with a little bit of a pinch of salt, and even if, let's say, the most a strict Muslim and strict Jew that believes the Messiah is coming, and they believe that the Antichrist is coming and all this stuff, that could happen in 100,000 years. Who said it's going to happen tomorrow? And this is the issue that we're seeing. This is why it's caused, people are saying it's end days, it's coming now. People have been saying it's coming now for the last 2,000 years. That's not
what I mean, though. Like, because I'm saying that I'm not talking about the factual accuracy of the Moshiach coming being the stumbling block. I mean, I'm talking about people's
people having being taught religious views that say these things in the real world.
Yeah, because if God tells you something and you believe that God's real and he's told you to do something, what human on earth are you going to listen to that is more right than God? So if that's what you believe, then it's going to be very hard to change your mind on that. And if your beliefs are violent and extreme, then, I take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not actually pondering every day, when's the Mashiach coming? But there are people that are doing that, and there are people on the other side that are waiting for that too, because they believe there's going to be some end of the world war, some Armageddon. So that those people are the problem, not the idea that it might actually happen.
Yeah.
Judaism is so Eyes on Palestine goes, Judaism is a religion your parents might have been following the religion and you decided not to, and now you call yourself Jew, but that does not make it a nationality. So just a little clarity on Judaism, because Judaism is a little bit confusing because it's a religion, it's a meta-ethnicity, and it's a people as well. Okay, so there's the religion of Judaism that's believing in the Torah and the books that followed, and there's many different variations of Jewish belief, perhaps thousands. But then there's Jewish, the meta-ethnicity, and that's really people from all over the world who, most of whom are Levantine, not entirely. If you look at Ashkenazi DNA, I'm Ashkenazi, for example. Well, 99.7% Ashkenazi, according to 23andMe. Ashkenazi DNA is around 50% Levantine and 50% European. So that Levantine DNA, right? Roughly. Genetics is not an exact thing. There's estimations and all that.
Yeah.
So then the European Jews, as we're considered, do come from the region. It's also a people because, and this is probably more complex, but like if you convert to Judaism, you're not of the meta-ethnicity Judaism, you are of the religion, but it's said that you don't only believe in the religion, you kind of join a peoplehood.
Join the tribe,
yeah. One of the reasons why this is confusing is because these are just like human-made words: ethnicity, religion, and each we don't quite fit the mold like other ethnicities or other religions. So it sometimes gets a little bit confusing. But I hope this kind of clarifies. And then they ask: is Zionism racist? Is apartheid evil? Apartheid evil. So two questions. Yeah. Is Zionism racist? Is apartheid evil? Thank you.
No,
Thank you. We need critical.
Done. No, yes, done. Go. Next one.
Next.
Let's,
you want to explain why, Adar?
Yeah. No. I'm gonna come with this very hot take on both of these right now.
Ooh.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Lay it on me.
So Zionism is the Jewish right for self-determination on our ancestral homeland.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, and most Jews would agree by that definition, the question is, what does it mean to self-determine? So there's countless different variations of self-determination. Some of them, and when people are anti-Zionist, they're generally not saying they don't support Jewish self-determination. They're saying they don't support Jewish self-determination that looks like this, that causes Palestinians to be oppressed. So there are many forms of Jewish self-determination that could be seen as racist, but I'd say a better framing is that many, if not most, forms of Jewish self-determination are somewhat exclusionary. Okay, very few Zionists say, let's have a binational state where all people on the land from the river to the sea have equal voting rights, because most Jews see that as the destruction of Israel, putting them making them the demographic minority and putting them in immediate danger. So most versions of Jewish self-determination does have some nature of being exclusionary because it's seen as essential for the survival of the Jewish people on this land. Being exclusionary in your nation state is not wholly unique. You have many nations that do something similar. For Japan is one example of a national ethno-state. And most countries do have some kind of, almost all countries do have some strict or sane immigration policy, right? Also because they care about demographics. Jews are in a trickier situation, this land's in a trickier situation because it's very easy to understand why Jews care about being a demographic majority, but it's also easy to understand why many people would object to that on this land, because we created a homeland on a piece of land that was occupied by another group of people, right? Palestinian people. So they say So the case could be made, if there's any place that can't be exclusionary, it needs to be the land of Israel and Palestine, because there's two distinct populations here, and you need to have a system of equality. So this really is one of the greatest challenges to Zionism, is that most versions of it are exclusionary, but many people don't accept that it should be exclusionary, because you have another population living here, and they've been living here for many, many generations, some of them for thousands of years. So right here is one of the greatest challenges to Zionism.